This video documents deep research into what economists call silent default, the method governments use to eliminate massive debt not through bankruptcy or dramatic default, but through quiet, systematic currency devaluation and inflation that transfers wealth from savers to the government over decades, where the U.S. owes $38 trillion. It will never pay it back. Not because it can't, because it won't. And it's already started erasing that debt in a way most people will never notice, until their savings are gone. I called 15 millionaires. They already know exactly what's happening, and they're already moving their money. Opening with the shocking realization that $38 trillion in national debt being too large to ever repay through traditional means, creating mathematical impossibility, where even $1 billion daily repayment, taking 104 years to clear, creating the only logical conclusion being that this debt will be eliminated through other means, not repayment, and the mechanism already being used right now being called silent default. A term most Americans have never heard, but that explains why they're purchasing power shrinking every single year while government tells them economy is strong. Promising complete transparency, showing exact mechanism of how silent default works with specific historical examples. The 15 millionaire conversations revealing unanimous understanding of this system and active portfolio repositioning to protect and grow wealth during the wealth transfer, and honest assessment of timeline and impact, teaching that understanding this single concept being potentially most important financial knowledge any viewer will ever learn because it affects literally every dollar they own or will earn. Before watching, how much do you think the U.S. can actually pay back of the $38 trillion? Comment your honest guess. Establishing the mathematical reality. First, where U.S. GDP being approximately $27 trillion annually, meaning total national debt exceeding annual economic output for first time in history since World War II. Federal government currently spending $6.5 trillion annually, while collecting only $4.4 trillion in revenue, creating $2.1 trillion annual deficit, meaning government adding $2.1 trillion to debt every single year, not reducing it. Interest payments alone now costing $1.1 trillion annually. Largest single expense in federal budget, meaning government paying $1.1 trillion just to service debt, not reduce it, creating debt trap, where interest consuming revenue, preventing repayment, and at current trajectory debt reaching $50 trillion within 3 years and $100 trillion within 15 years, creating exponential growth, impossible to repay through conventional means, teaching that this not being opinion or prediction, but simple arithmetic, where numbers making repayment mathematically impossible. The U.S. spends $1.1 trillion just on interest payments annually. That's more than most countries' entire GDP. Did you know this? Comment yes or no. Explaining the 3 ways governments historically handle unpayable debt, where option A, traditional default, meaning explicitly saying, we won't pay, like Argentina or Greece did, creating immediate crisis, currency collapse, frozen assets, and economic devastation. This being the obvious option everyone understands. Option B, hyperinflation, meaning printing massive money so fast that currency becomes worthless, like Zimbabwe or Venezuela. Also obvious and dramatic. And option C, silent default, meaning gradually inflating currency over 10 to 20 years, so debt loses value slowly enough that nobody notices crisis in real time, but dramatically enough that $38 trillion effectively disappears over a decade. This being the smart option that wealthy nations always choose because it's invisible to most people and doesn't trigger panic, revealing that United States has already chosen option C and has been executing it for 15 plus years, teaching that this not being future prediction but current ongoing reality, where Federal Reserve inflation targeting 2% annually being explicitly designed to gradually erode purchasing power, and real inflation consistently running 3 to 7%, not 2% as reported, meaning actual wealth erosion being 3 to 7% annually, creating silent transfer from savers and debtors to government. Explaining the mechanism in detail, where when government needs to spend more than it collects, the $2.1 trillion annual deficit, it borrows by issuing treasury bonds. The Federal Reserve, which is not part of the government but acts as its banker, purchases these bonds by literally creating new digital dollars out of nothing, called monetization of debt. These new dollars enter circulation, increasing total money supply. More dollars chasing same amount of goods and services creates inflation, where each existing dollar buys less, and over time $38 trillion in debt denominated in dollars, that now buy 30 to 50% less than when borrowed effectively, disappearing through purchasing power destruction rather than repayment, teaching that government never needs to pay back debt in traditional sense because it can simply make the dollars the debt is denominated in worth less. Comment prompt. The Federal Reserve literally creates money out of nothing to buy government debt. This is real, it's legal, and it's destroying your savings. Comment if you knew this already. Revealing historical proof through 3 case studies, where case study number 1. Post-World War II United States, where U.S. debt reached 120% of GDP after World War II, similar to today's 123%, and government chose silent default, running inflation at 3 to 4% annually for 30 years, systematically eroding debt from 120% to 30% of GDP by 1970 without ever defaulting. This being textbook example that every economist knows about, but mainstream media never discusses. Case study hashtag. 2. United Kingdom post-World War I, where British pound inflated dramatically over 20 years, slowly erasing war debts without formal default. And case study number 3. Japan's lost decades, where Japanese government attempted similar strategy with mixed results, teaching that silent default historically always being chosen by developed nations when debt becomes unpayable because it transfers pain invisibly to citizens through inflation rather than dramatically. Through bankruptcy after World War II, the U.S. had 120% debt to GDP ratio, just like today. They silently erased it through inflation over 30 years. And they're doing it again. Comment. Shocked or not surprised? Presenting the 15 millionaire conversations conducted over 2 weeks, where each millionaire asked identical questions. Do you understand silent default? How is it affecting your wealth? What are you doing about it? And what should normal people do? Revealing unanimous understanding among wealthy, where all 15 confirmed understanding silent default mechanism clearly. 13 of 15 said they actively repositioning portfolios in response. Average wealthy portfolio now holding 20 to 25% in inflation-resistant assets,